Elohim unum Deum, Patrem omnipotente.
The topic is matrimonial consent. Matrimonial consent. What is matrimonial consent? Very simple. When you go for marriage, you will hear, I take you to be my lawful wedded wife, to have and to hold, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. That is matrimonial consent. In marriage, that is the essential thing. So if you sing Gloria and do the bridal tray, and do offer tray, and do all the thanksgiving, and forget that one, there was no marriage. That is the most important thing. So the matrimonial consent is the declaration of the willingness of the parties to take each other as husband and wife. This consent must be clearly expressed, just as you have the formula in the church given. If you go to some churches, they will say, for richer, for in health and in health. No. The consent must be clearly expressed and must not be mutilated. Now, it is the consent that makes marriage. That is what makes a marriage valid. And for that consent itself to be valid, it must be without defects. And there are so many things that can make a consent, the matrimonial consent, to be defective. The first one is when the person giving that consent does not have the capacity to give consent. What are those things that will make somebody not have capacity to give consent? Number one, insanity. Somebody that has psychological problem cannot give consent. Number two, age. Somebody who is underage cannot validly give consent. And for the sake of marriage, it is 14 years for a female and 16 years for a male. Anything below that, the consent will be invalid because the person will not have the capacity to give consent. Another thing that could make consent to be defective is I'll talk about insanity, is lack of freedom. Lack of freedom. When you give the consent out of fear. Either fear of what will happen to you if you don't give the consent, or simply out of respect or reverence for a particular person. So if that consent is given out of force or fear, the consent will be invalid. Imagine in a barrack, the son of a captain impregnates the daughter of a major general in a barrack. So you see that sometimes both the son and the captain himself may not have the power to say, I will not marry this girl. So out of fear of what will happen to him, the father, if he doesn't marry the girl, the boy can give the consent. You also have pressure. Pressure. Your mother says, if you don't marry this girl, she will kill herself. And so that your mother does not kill herself, you say, I take you to be my lawful wedded wife. That consent was given out of pressure, so it's invalid. Another thing that can invalidate consent is error of person. Error of person. That error of person has to be a substantial one and has to relate to the personality of the person. For instance, you went to the village and you saw this girl. You wanted to marry the girl. You now asked them to bring the girl to the city. And they brought the twin sister of the girl, and you did not know. And you say, I take you to be my lawful wedded wife. That is substantial error of person. Because that was not the person you had in mind when you were saying, I take you to be my lawful wedded wife. There can also be error of person that affects not the personality but the quality of the person. And that can invalidate consent when it is clear that if you knew that this person is so, you wouldn't have married the person. For instance, something very substantial. A girl has no womb and they didn't tell you. And you say, I take you to be my lawful wedded wife. That is error of person. The girl is HIV positive and did not tell you. And you say, I take you to be my lawful wedded wife. That is error of person. That affects substantially the quality of the person that you are getting married to. Or there is a particular sickness, maybe disorder, that runs in the family of the man, and they did not tell you, they hid it from you, knowing that if they had told you, you would have agreed to marry the person, and they hide it from you. And then the girl now says, I take it to be my lawful wedded husband. So these are the things that can affect matrimonial consent, so that when this consent is defective because of these impediments, they become invalid. And because they are invalid, the marriage itself becomes invalid. Matrimonial consent can also be affected by simulation. Simulation means that you are saying it, you don't mean it. You are just saying it, you don't mean it. You may be wondering how that is possible. Take, for instance, the case of an old man who has married an old woman. The woman starts going to church, and the woman wants to receive communion. And then you are asked to go and do marriage with the man. The man refuses to come to church. And you go to his house, you are begging him, I beg. Just talk and say, you take us a lawful wedded or a wife. Just say it like that. And to just end the disturbance, the man says, okay, what must make I talk? So, Mama Julie, I take you as my lawful wedded wife, for better, for worse, till death do us part. Are you okay now? You say yes. That is not consent. That is simulation of consent. For the man, He's not taking the woman now. He already took the woman as a wife years ago when he paid the bride price. So he's not taking that woman now. So there's no marriage being contracted because, and after giving it, when you come back, you say, as soon as we left, I changed my mind, though. I'm not married again. So that is why consent by proxy is something that is very rare, and it happens only in extreme conditions. So when you have a marriage and the consent is valid, the marriage is valid. But when you have a marriage and the consent is defective, that marriage is invalid because it is the consent that makes the marriage. You can see that in marriage, that is why they say that the minister is the man and the woman. The priest only receives the consent, blesses the consent, and declares them husband and wife. But it is that consent that makes a marriage. Thank you. So, on matrimonial consent, any question? Yes.
Father, what about the person that is terminally ill, have a limited lifespan?
Terminally ill?
Yes, have a limited lifespan. Can that person give a valid consent?
Yes. If he is terminally ill and he can get married, people get married at the point of death. Yes, I've seen people when they want to die, that is when they do their marriage. So, it doesn't affect consent. Yes.
Okay. So, in a situation whereby the consent is given by the person who has limited time span or lifespan, sorry, and maybe the person has enough wealth, and the other person, the lady, accepted because of that girl, is it valid or invalid?
That is, the man gives consent, matrimonial consent, and the lady is accepting the consent because of the wealth of the man. Abi? As long as it is not conditional, in the sense that when the wealth ceases, the marriage ceases. It's only when it is conditional that it will be invalid. In the sense that you say, I take you to be my lawful wedded wife, in as much as you remain rich. You understand? So that is conditional consent. But if you are motivated to accept because the man is rich, and you are already said for better for worse now, richer for poorer. So when the man gets poor anytime, you have to accept. Yeah.
My question is, I'm just hearing it for the first time that 14 years old female and 16 years old can give consent for marriage. I'm hearing it for the first time because I believe that we, the Satana, will be criticizing the northern part that they do give their female children at the early age. I don't know if this is applicable to Catholic Church. I'm hearing it for the first time.
Yes, the canon law stipulates 14 for female and 16 for male. And it now says, listen now, it now says conference of bishops in particular countries can increase the age, but they cannot reduce it. You understand now? And now said conference of bishops can increase the age, but it cannot reduce it. So I think in Nigeria, I think it's 18 and 16. They increased it to 18 and 16 for the Nigerian bishops. But canonically, universal law is 16 and 14. Glory to Jesus.
Father, I have a friend who his dad made a law before he passed about his sons marrying into a particular tribe. Now, that was the kind of person that he brought, and the mom was speaking to that statement which the dad made before he passed. Now, he then broke the relationship and got married to somebody that the mom brought. I think the wedding lasted about 8 months, it was not up to a year, and they divorced. After which, he went back to the person before that the mom refused. Now, the entire family has given their consent, except the mom. As a matter of fact, the auntie has said that she's willing to stand as his mom for their court wedding. But without the mom's consent, is that of the family value?
We don't consent I'm talking about is those married now, the man and the woman. Not your, you have no business with your mom's consent or your father's consent. It's the two persons, the man and the woman, not the father or mother. We don't need those ones consent. If you want to marry anybody and your father says no, if you feel that you are mature enough to handle your marriage, go ahead. You don't need the father to say yes. There's no requirement that says your father or your mother must agree to the person you want to marry. No. So consent we're talking about here is the two persons married, not family consent. There's nothing like father's consent or mother's consent. They are not required for marriage.
Yes, Father. This consent, how many times should it be given? Because we are, according to man, like you marry once. No, you don't marry man should. There's no polygamy. But consideration, the woman dies, the man goes to the altar on that consent. Sometimes they divorce officially, come to the altar for consent. That thing we read in the social media, the woman has married about 2 presidents or 3 presidents. Which means they may have come to the altar with clear consent as many times as possible. Is that by encouraging polygamy or what? How many times is this consent be given by a particular man or woman?
The consent you gave only subsists as long as the marriage subsists. So if you give matrimonial consent to somebody and the person dies, you give to another person now. If that one dies, you can give to 1 million persons. As long as they are not alive, maybe. So there's no number of times you can give it. But you cannot have one consent subsisting and then you now give another one to be valid. So you cannot give to this person is still alive, the marriage is still valid. You now start giving the consent to another person, the marriage will be invalid. But if the person has died, you go and give to another person. There's no number of times that, as long as the person has died, you can give to as many times. You see what? Divorce officially. There is no divorce in the Catholic Church. There is nothing like separate officially. In the Catholic Church, there are only 2, are we listening? There are only 2 living together will be asked to separate and go their separate ways and go and marry another person. One is when there is the bond is dissolved. When the bond is dissolved. And a bond that is ratified and consummated can never be dissolved by any power on earth. That is to say, when the marriage is valid and they have consummated it, that means the man and the woman have slept together after the marriage. it cannot be dissolved again. The only way the church can dissolve a valid marriage is when two people who are non-Catholics, traditional worshippers, they marry. In the eyes of the church, that marriage is valid. It's a valid bond. So when one of them wants to now marry another person in the Catholic Church, and the other one is refusing to come to the Catholic Church, they can dissolve that bond because of the new marriage that the person wants to. That bond now is valid but not ratified. That the two of them are not baptized. You understand? That is not valid, ratified, and consummated. The only other way that they can say people living together that they should go their way and go and remarry is when the bond is declared null and void. That is to say, they were never husband and wife. They just started drama that day. So when you say they go to chancery, the chancery can either do two of these things. One is to dissolve your former bond so that you can now marry in the church. Former bond when you didn't know Christ, so that you can marry in the church. That is one. Two is to declare nullity. That is to say that the marriage you claim to be was never marriage. Let me give you an example. I just told you about when consent is defective. The case of somebody who was forced to marry another person. He didn't want to marry the person, but because the father said, "You don't marry the person, I will kill you," and he now gave the consent. 30 years time, the person can come up and go to chancery and say, "The person I married, it was by force I married the person. The consent was not freely given." If you can prove it, they will declare that marriage null and void. That is what they do. They now declare nullity, the marriage nullity. So once they declare that, it means that you were never married. You just started drama that they go and you can now go and marry. So if
But in a situation where someone got missing and over 10 years the person hasn't returned, or another situation where the person is traveling on the door, maybe in the sea, and the ship capsizes. Some persons were rescued, they didn't see the body of the man or woman. Can the marriage or the vow, that thing be invalid?
that is, if I understand it very well, a man entered the ship capsized. They have not seen the body. They don't know whether it's dead or not. Can the woman go and marry another person, presuming the person is dead? Is that what you are saying?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that is dicey. It is dicey. If there is sufficient reason to prove that the person who is missing is dead, the woman can go and remarry. But the moment the first one shows up, it will invalidate the second one.
That is to say, if someone travels and never returns for 10 years, you can go and remarry.
No, that's what I said. How did I talk to that? I said, if there is sufficient reason to show that the person is dead, you understand? For instance, they say the person traveled and the person was in the plane and the plane crashed. But you didn't see the body. You didn't see the body. There is sufficient reason to believe that the person has died. Eh? Or the person was in a bus. The bus had an accident. All those inside will burnt beyond recognition. There is sufficient reason to believe that the person is dead. But it's possible that when the thing happened, the person ran away. Maybe when the plane landed, the person was able to struggle out. And because of the trauma, the person may lost memory. You know it happens. The person may lost memory. You never know where he's from. So after like 15 years, he may come back to his senses and know that, okay, I'm from this person, I decide to go back home. So the person is alive, so it will invalidate. Yes.
Glory to Jesus. Father, what I'm about to say happened in Catholic Church. This man and the woman, they got married. They were happily married. They wedded them in the church. I think the woman had 3 children for the man. Then, along the line, the woman just passed and left the house. The man started begging, please come back, please come back. People were saying maybe the influence that is serving us, when he comes down, he will come back. The man really was patient, waiting for this woman. Before the woman got married to another man. And the man he got married to, the man had, she had another 3 children, or 2 children for the man, when they have not broken their marriage at all from the church. So that the man now was now in a dilemma. He was not taking communion. The woman was just doing her own. So the matter was like going on. I know they went to counseling and the rest is. So there was a particular time they were now saying that the man now brought another woman, he wants to wed the woman in the church. They were now saying no, the man cannot wed that woman because he's still legally married to that woman. But the woman refused to come and do the necessary, maybe for them to say, okay, I've left the home or not, to explain to the bishop that she has left. In fact, she just abandoned Catholic Church and everything. So really to the man time, I don't really know what happened later. Because the man was just the woman that he wants to marry. He didn't marry, although the woman was pregnant then. The woman has to give birth, although they were still coming to church, that they were not married. So in such situation, what is the advice to the man before? In such situation like that, when the woman packed and lived like that?
Well, it's unfortunate. Yes, because justified and consummated, you cannot dissolve it. Even if that woman has come to explain to the bishop that she has officially left, the bishop cannot do anything. There's nothing the bishop can do. You can't dissolve a marriage that was valid and consummated. There's nothing the bishop can do. But we have to also clear something. You find some persons, once their wife leaves, they will stop receiving communion. You only stop receiving communion when you now get married to another person without marrying in the church. So let's get that one clear. The fact that your wife passed away does not mean that you stop receiving communion. It's only when you have now married another person outside the church that you can stop receiving communion. Even the woman that packed out of the husband's house and starts staying at home is not supposed to stop receiving communion. It's only when someone pays money on her head that she stop receiving communion. Understand? So let's get that one clear. But for this case, there is nothing anybody can do. The only way out is if that man is able to do thorough investigation or try and dig to see whether she will find any fault in that their marriage. And look for something on that day, look for anything in that their marriage to prove that the marriage was invalid. That's the only way out.
The man that left and had another man, that was enough for the day to say.
Enough reason because the man wants to marry another man.
Yes.
How? No. There's nothing any bishop can do for that. No bishop. Except to go and find fault with ceremony itself.
Father, this is a Catholic of the team. Surprising sometimes. But I have a family, a friend family. The man, they are living for many years, peacefully with children. So it's funny. This man, when you come back from work or something like that, he starts to beat the woman. They beat to the extent of killing her. And this woman will continue shouting. To the extent neighbors will come at and separating fight every time. To the extent the machete, use machete to call the woman that back. Will such woman continue to stay in that marriage?
No. The church provides. Listen now. The church provides. Are we listening? The church provides for separation of spouse while bond still lasts. That means you can pack out and leave the man and go and stay your home. You understand? There are two conditions that the church allows for that. One is violence. Two is infidelity. Violence and infidelity. If one of the partner consistently keeps committing adultery consistently, then the other person can back out. For that of adultery, you are obliged to at least get clearance from your priest. But for violence, either violence towards you or your children, you don't need to tell the priest first. You back out first and tell the priest, I don't promote. You understand now? That is what the Lord says. So, but that one is separation of spouse while bond still lasts. That means he's still your husband, he's still your wife. The only way you can use that one to get dissolution of bond in the church is like this one now that is violent. If the woman can go further to prove that the man psychologically cannot live peacefully with another person, it means that the man does not have the capacity to assume the essential function of marriage. That is a cause for dissolution of bond in the church. It means that the consent was defective. Because when you don't have the capacity to assume, let's say somebody who is nymphomaniac, he cannot stay with one man. Never. There's not, it's a psychological problem. There's nothing you can do. So the person I think it will be my lawful wedded man. I think it will be my lawful wedded husband. That consent the person is giving is defective. Because the person does not have the capacity to take one person as husband or wife because of a psychological problem. If you can prove that in the tribunal, they will grant you dissolution. So the same with this violence. If you can prove it, that this person lacks the capacity to live with another human being peacefully, it means that the person lacks the capacity to assume the essential properties of marriage. It can be dissolved based on that. You know what I'm saying? That the only way you can dissolve it is you have to look for defects in the consent. That's the way they use that one to strike it off. But not just that you pack out and then, because there are some people, some society, very charismatic, they usually tell their members, you must endure. And when the person packs out, they will even suspend the person. Yes, I've had to correct that several times in my parish. They will suspend the woman because the woman packed out of the man's house and the man is violent. So I always tell them, and they have come to accept that the church permits that. You separate. Violence, you don't even need to tell priest first. Violence, separate first. Before you're not talking about reconciliation. So thank you very much.
Okay, Father.
Last question.
Father, I see this thing upon concepts. It's individual. Meaning, you have it, I have it. Which we have expressed here that nobody can change. But when we talk of prosy, in the ancient days, prosy means when a girl is small, especially girls, not girls, your father and mother will say, this is the person who will marry you. Especially from the boy's side, they say, we betroth this girl to this boy. And they continue to grow like that. But sometimes you see this betroth is somewhere the girl will grow up and say, I don't like this boy again. Or the girl says, I don't like this boy again. And at the end of it, perhaps, they will force them to marry. They will force them to marry. And when they marry, they must have gone their way. But love is indelible. You can't delete love. And in future, they decide to come and give themselves consent again. Is that proper? They have already gone their way because somebody effectively obstructed them from marrying. And they went and really, the way we use consummate and consummate somewhere. And after that, they come in future and say, we have always loved ourselves, so we must continue. What is this situation about?
Justified and consummated, you cannot dissolve it. Even if that woman has come to explain to the bishop that she has officially left, the bishop cannot do anything. There's nothing the bishop can do. You can't dissolve a marriage that was valid and consummated. There's nothing the bishop can do. But we have to also clear something. You find some persons, once their wife leaves, they will stop receiving communion. You only stop receiving communion when you now get married to another person without marrying in the church. So let's get that one clear. The fact that your wife passed away does not mean that you stop receiving communion. It's only when you have now married another person outside the church that you can stop receiving communion. Even the woman that packed out of the husband's house and starts in her home is not supposed to stop receiving communion. It's only when someone pays money on her head that she stop receiving communion. Understand? So that's the one clear. But for this case, there is nothing anybody can do. The only way out is if that man is able to do thorough investigation or try and dig to see whether they will find any fault in that their marriage. And look for something that they look for anything in that their marriage to prove that the marriage was invalid. That's the only way out.
The man that left and had another man, that was enough for the dead.
Enough prison because the woman wants to marry another man? How? No. There's nothing any bishop can do for that. No bishop. Except to go and find fault with ceremony itself.
Father, this is a Catholic of the team. Surprise me sometimes. But I have a family, a friend family. The man, they are living for many years, peacefully with children. So it's 40. This man, when he come back from work or something like that, he starts to beat the woman. They beat to the extent of killing her. And this woman will continue shouting to the extent neighbors will come at them, separating fight every time. To the extent the machete, use machete, that's called the woman that back. Will such woman continue to stay in that marriage?
No. The church provides. Listen now. The church provides, are we listening? The church provides for separation of spouse while bond still lasts. That means you can pack out and leave the man and go and stay your home. You understand? There are two conditions that the church allows for that. One is violence. Two is infidelity. Violence and infidelity. If one of the partner consistently keeps committing adultery consistently, then the other person can back out. For that of adultery, you are obliged to at least get clearance from your priest. But for violence, either violence towards you or your children, you don't need to tell the priest first. You pack out first and tell the priest, I don't promote. You understand now? That is what the Lord says. So, but that one is separation of spouse while bond still lasts. That means he's still your husband, he's still your wife. The only way you can use that one to get dissolution of bond in the church is like this one now that is violent. If the woman can go further to prove that the man psychologically cannot live peacefully with another person, it means that the man does not have the capacity to assume the essential function of marriage. That is a cause for dissolution of bond in the church. It means that the consent was defective. Because when you don't have the capacity to assume, let's say somebody who is nymphomaniac, he cannot stay with one man. Never. There's not, it's a psychological problem. There's nothing you can do. So the person says, I think to my lawful wedded man, I think to my lawful wedded husband. That consent the person is giving is defective. Because the person does not have the capacity to take one person as husband or wife because of a psychological problem. If you can prove that in the tribunal, they will grant you dissolution. So the same with this violence. If you can prove it, that this person lacks the capacity to live with another human being peacefully, it means that the person lacks the capacity to assume the essential properties of marriage. It can be dissolved based on that. You know what I'm saying? That the only way you can dissolve it is you have to look for defects in the consent. That's the way they use that one to strike it off. But not just that you pack out. And then, because there are some people, some society, very charismatic, they usually tell their members, You must endure. And when the person packs out, they will even suspend the person. Yes, I've had to correct that several times in my parish. They will suspend the woman because the woman packed out of the man's house and the man is violent. So I always tell them, and they have come to accept that the church permits that. You separate. Violence, you don't even need to tell priest first. Violence, separate first. Before you're not talking about reconciliation. So thank you very much. Last question.
But I see this thing called concept. It's individual. Meaning, you have it, I have it. Which we have expressed here that nobody can change. But when we talk of prosy in the ancient days, prosy means when a girl is small, especially girls, not girls, your father and mother will say, this is the person who will marry you. Especially from the boy's side, they say, we betrothed this girl to this boy. And they continue to grow like that. But sometimes you see this betrothed is somewhere the girl will grow up and say, I don't like this boy again. Or the girl says, I don't like this boy again. And at the end of it, perhaps, they will force them to marry. They will force them to marry. And when they marry, they must have done their way. But love is indelible. You can't delete love. And in future, they decide to come and give themselves consent again. Is that proper? They have already done their way because somebody effectively obstructed them from marrying. And they went and really, the way we use consummate and consummate somewhere. And after that, they come in future and say, we have always loved ourselves, so we must continue. What is this situation about?
The two that were betrothed to each other.
No.
Or the two betrothed to each other were forced to marry, but they love somebody else.
Yeah. The two betrothed to marry themselves later found out they cannot marry.
Yes.
But already they have gone into it due to the pressure of their parents.
Yes.
And the other person, they have gone their own way. But came in future and say, this is what the love birds came and said, this is what.
So this one that was forced to marry wants to leave the marriage and go and look for their love, their true love. What they are saying.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
Of course, all they need to do is go to tribunal and prove it that your parents forced you to marry. The church will dissolve that marriage. They will declare nullity. Just go to tribunal and prove that it was your parents that forced you to marry. The church will declare that marriage null and void, and you go and marry who you like. Which adultery again? Which adultery?
Because they have gone their own way, they married, they joined everything together. Before they on their own terms to agree.
That marriage is null and void. It's not adultery. They just came to act drama. There was no marriage. They were never married, so there's no adultery there. So thank you very much, and God bless you.